Welcome back to The Bible is Art, where we explore the literary artistry of the Bible. And then this week, we are looking at the literary art in day 3 of creation. So, in the beginning, God, our main character, created the heavens and the earth. But he didn't finish it. He brought it up to the point where you have an earth covered in water that's dark. And once we are there, our narrator slows down the pace so that we will focus our attention on these 6 days of action. And in these 6 days of action, we see how our main character works. And we learn about this thing, this world, and how he designs it. But we also learn about him as a character. So Genesis 1 and these 6 days serve as characterization, giving us an overture into the identity of our main character. So on day 1, he creates light and separates the light from the darkness, and to see what that has to do and the fascinating symbolism and characterization, you can look at the video here. And then on day 2, he separates waters that are above from waters that are below and puts heaven, sky in between. And you can see all the fascinating literary stuff and characterization in this video here. And now we are on to day 3. And when we get to day 3, there are some new things, 2 distinctively new things that our character does, and 2 things that tell us, unfold his identity more than the previous 2 days. So here is what happens on day 3. And God said, "Let the waters under the heavens be gathered together into one place, and let the dry land appear." And it was so. God called the dry land earth, and the waters that were gathered together he called seas. And God saw that it was good. And God said, "Let the earth sprout vegetation, plants yielding seed, and fruit trees bearing fruit, in which is their seed, each according to its kind on the earth." And it was so. The earth brought forth vegetation, plants yielding seed according to their own kinds, and trees bearing fruit, in which is their seed, each according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening, and there was morning, the 3rd day. So, what is new here? Well, the first thing that's new is that God speaks more. Notice, on the first 2 days, you have one time where it says, "And God said." But here on the 3rd day, twice we get, "And God said," and we get 2 speeches. So there is an increase in speech. And because what God's speech does in this creation work is that it does things, it creates, it moves around, it separates, it divides, it does things, that means that God's action increases as well. And even more, so you have multiplication of speech, a multiplication of action, but then you see that God creates these plants and vegetation which have in themselves the capacity to multiply life. And so there's a third aspect of multiplication: more speech, more action, and more stuff, more things from creation. So that's the first thing. The second new thing has to do not with the quantity, but with the quality of God's action. That is, For the first time in the creation week, something other than our main character has agency. You see, God gives agency, gives power to the earth. See, notice what it says. And God said, "Let the earth sprout vegetation." And then in verse 12, it says, "The earth brought forth vegetation." So here, God is giving the capacity to participate in his creation, in his design, to something other than himself. And we have a new actor, a new subject who takes action, the earth. Okay, so here are these new things. But always when you notice something cool or unique, you have to go and ask, well, what does this have to do with the plot, with the story, with the characterization? Why is the author telling us this? Well, he's telling us this because this will unfold our main character in fascinating ways. So think about this. We are in the middle of this first scene in the Bible. In this first story, we are in the middle. And in the middle of this story, our character increases his speech and increases his action. And the action that he does is give life, give agency to the world and let them participate, help, give activity in this whole design process. And you see, this is the same thing that our character will do in other stories in the Bible. That is, in the middle of the story, he will do more, he will speak more, but he won't do and speak more as a sort of deus ex machina, as just sort of an external force coming in and taking care of business. No, he will do so in such a way that he comes in, gives life to the characters in certain ways. He will activate the characters so that they can participate in his work. Now, this isn't some sort of code. No, this is character. This is characterization. This is telling us about our character is that he does not let stories get to the end and then come in and fix things. No, he comes in the middle to put things right, to instill life and energy so that those characters can become integral, creative parts of the story. And there are two fascinating instances I want to look at this. The first one is the Abraham story that runs from Genesis chapter 12 through 22 or 23. And on simply a verbal level, in the middle of the story, there is a concentration of God's speech and his action. And in these middle chapters, 15, 16, and 17, is where God makes a covenant, this formal relationship with Abraham. So he increases his speech, but just like in Genesis 1, where the action is giving life in order for the creation to participate, so also this covenant allows Abraham to participate. And God has designed it so that Abraham has to participate. Notice what it says. He's going to multiply Abraham greatly. He's going to be a father of a multitude of nations. He'll be exceedingly fruitful. Kings shall come from him. God is entering into this story, doing more, speaking more, multiplying, and he is giving energy and life so that our characters can participate in God's plan. The second fascinating use of this is with Jesus and the Gospels. Now, there were many unexpected things about Jesus. And one of the unexpected things is the time of his coming. That is, when you read the prophets of the Old Testament and they're saying all of these things God is going to do in the future, it kind of seems like it's all going to happen at the end. At the end of time, God is going to come back. He's going to make a new world, forgive sins, all this great stuff, and that's going to be it. Time's up, story's over. But no, the fascinating thing is that God comes in the middle of history. And that was something that no one expected. God comes in Jesus in the middle of history, and his words multiply. Notice, at the beginning of John's gospel, Jesus is specifically called God's Word. In the beginning was the Word. And Jesus's actions are called, one of the few titles for the things that he does are his works. And so in the three Gospels, you have the multiplication of God's activity and his speech in the middle of history. And what he does in this middle of the story is multiply, is give energy and life to the other characters in the story so that they can participate. Remember what Jesus says at the end of Matthew's gospel, at the end of that story in the Great Commission. He says, go into all the world, making disciples of all nations, baptizing them. And he says, and behold, I am with you always. So God comes in the middle of the story in Jesus, and he gives us his presence. And with that presence, he says, go out and make disciples, multiply, participate in my design. And so you see from Genesis chapter 1, already we get a picture of God's character and how he works in stories. And that, my friends, is why the Bible is art.
Hey guys, thanks so much for checking out the video this week. I had a lot of fun making it. I just want to let you know I set up a Patreon page. If you're enjoying the videos, if you want to support them, you can do it over there. I would really appreciate it. And send me an email if you've got any questions or suggestions. Thanks so much.